You said this week you want to end the blight that is emergency housing. That was the word you chose. And part of that means increasing scrutiny of those who are applying for emergency housing grants. What evidence do you have that undeserving people are accessing emergency housing grants at the moment?
Yeah, so for us, fundamentally, it's about rights and responsibilities. So obviously, there will always be a place for the government to provide emergency housing for people who need it. When it started, and it started life under the last National government in 2016, 2017, it started life as a short-term measure. You know, the government gives you a grant, a voucher,
sure.
you take it.
So my question then, so what evidence do you have that undeserving people are accessing those grants at the moment?
Anecdotal feedback from the community and from MSD.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible answer, but like I'm saying, he answered it. I mean, like, I don't like the answer, but at least he didn't go round and round in circles. I'm not supporting his position, but I am going, it's a terrible answer, but he answered it.
Yeah, but also from the
Anecdotal
community.
feedback?
Yeah, well, look, this is a tough area, right? This is a really, really tough area. We've had advice from...
So what percentage of emergency housing grants are denied at the moment? Do you know that?
Not many. From memory, in the last year, about 2,500, 2,600, something like that, over 100,000.
Yeah, but that is still quite a few, isn't it?
Well, in relation to the overall number of over 100,000, 120,000 grants given, you know, 3,000 families there right now. Numbers have come back a bit recently, but 3,000 families, average length of stay is 26 weeks. Not many are declined. We're just saying to MSD, yep, you should have the support available if people need it. But you do need to ask a few questions of people like, are there other places you can stay? Going to a motel should not be the kind of first choice for people who need support.
Do you not think that MSD asks that at the moment?
They do, technically. We're asking them to really invigilate people a bit more to make sure that we're providing taxpayer support to people who really need support.
You've said that you won't be supporting people who have, quote, unreasonably contributed to their emergency housing need. What does that mean?
Now, this is a terrible answer. I know he's about to answer, but I'll explain it to you. The way that was set up, it sounds like they were saying something outside of emergency housing, but he actually says if they damage the hotel room, they'll then have to go live with friends and family, which means actually they're not responsible for being there because they're already there. So it seems that even the Bish doesn't quite understand the policy, because if they've contributed to it, that would appear to me to be something they've done before they get emergency housing. But the Bish says it's whilst they've got emergency housing, so they're already having it. So what have they contributed more to being a part of emergency housing when they're already in emergency housing? It's most peculiar.
Unfortunately, there are a group of people who abuse their rights and privileges. When it comes to emergency housing, they trash the place, for example, and people watching.
This is people who are applying for grants in the first place, and if they've unreasonably contributed to the emergency housing need, that suggests that
people have to reapply, right? That's the thing, is people often the grants are for, say, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. People have to reapply.
And you've shortened that window now too.
And we're going to shorten that window, yes.
So just to be clear though, so if someone has unreasonably contributed to their emergency housing need, you're talking about someone who's already in emergency housing or in social housing and has trashed the place.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there are a group of people.
So no one's in favour of people trashing motel rooms, but how have they contributed to being in that motel room, after they get put in it and they trash it? That's not contributing them to being in emergency housing because they're already in it. So I wonder, I'm almost being a bit generous here, I wonder if the Bish has got this wrong, which he shouldn't have, because it doesn't make any logical sense. He's saying, if you have contributed to being in emergency housing by messing up the emergency housing you're already in, then you won't be able to apply to be in emergency housing. It's just, it's a strange thing.
It's a dumb answer. Like, oh God, I'm having to interpret National Party policy. Like, surely the answer here is what he means is you were in a private rental and you didn't pay rent, or you got thrown out or evicted, and you unreasonably contributed to that circumstance, then we don't necessarily have to give you emergency housing. That's what he's meaning to say, I guess.
Well, maybe, because he gets 4 or 5 chances and he keeps going back. Jack actually says, so you're talking about people in emergency, and he goes, yep. So this is why I'm like, he has to be pretty stupid to miss the direct questions that Jack's answering him. If it's like someone who has wasted all their money at Sky City or something, so they've contributed to having no money, so therefore they need emergency housing, or they haven't paid their rent for 3 months, so they've contributed to it, so they then have emergency housing. Whereas that's not the question. And Bishop's answered it by saying this is about people already in emergency housing. It's quite bizarre. We'll play a bit more because it does get more circular.
Who do that, and there'll be people watching this morning who will have seen that in their own communities, and it's tragic. But the taxpayer at some point has to say, look, we're not just going to keep funding you to trash motel rooms and live in squalor. I don't think New Zealanders would accept that.
So where do those people go?
Great question.
Well, ultimately, they will have to go and bunk with friends and family. And that's what some people do now.
But wouldn't they have done that when MSD had given them the greater scrutiny that you're introducing?
Well, theoretically.
So to get emergency housing, you basically have to have no friends and family to bunk with. So now he's saying if we kick you out of emergency housing, you can go and bunk with friends and family, which they don't have because they had to not have them to get emergency housing. And this is where it goes round and round and round.
And hope, that's what we want to try
so
and get to.
So they only get emergency housing if they don't have anyone to stay with.
We want to make it genuinely a last resort. We want to make sure.
So the frustration in Bish's voice is he going, we're trying to make this a last resort, but we can't figure out how. That's basically what he's saying. Because it seems that what he's saying is it already is a last resort. So this is already a last resort. You have to not be able to go stay with friends and family. This has to be the last resort. And Nationals come in going, we've got to make this the last resort. It already is the last resort. Well, we're going to make it harder anyway. So then it appears like it's even the last resort because everything he's saying makes no sense because you can't go and stay with friends and family to get emergency housing. But if they kick you out of emergency housing, you have to go with friends and family that you can't do. It doesn't make any sense at all. Round and round and round and round and round and round.
Look, Jack goes, where do these people go? And I feel like that big sigh before the Bish answered was, look, Jack, we don't care.
Yeah.
We don't care where they go.
Or we want
them. We want them off our lists.
Yep.
We don't want to be paying for this. So maybe if they just go and camp out under a bridge or down by the river or next to the Oval, down by the motorway, and eventually the problem will attrit itself out of the books.
Yeah.
Do you get me, Jack?
Yeah.
Light up my thinking cigarette and away we go.